Today we are tackling a crumbling garage wall caused by extreme water damage. Can we repair it? We are talking about a 3-step process today to make sure this doesn't happen again. We'll talk about why this happened, how to restore and rebuild it, and how to stop it from happening again. We even have a bonus step 4 at the end to make it even better. We found this soft spot of sheathing and bottom plate on the garage when installing the patio. Is this an actual problem, or is it all in my head? Structural repairs can be scary and create lots of unknowns. How big a problem is it going to be? Is the wall going to collapse? Today on Matt's DIY Home Show, let's rip apart and find out, because you know we are going to DIY this. Today we're going to take a look at this garage, see how much damage there is, and see how much work we need to do to fix this wall. Dad's already done a whole bunch of work here trying to figure out what's going on with this wall. So from the outside, the first indication was when we pulled up some of the dirt here to put in the patio, and this can just be picked away with your hand. So we need to check out to see what's behind here. We are replacing all of this with hardy board and the bottom here with some veneer stone. So we need to sort out this wall. This isn't a load-bearing wall. They're all full trusses. So the back wall back there is load-bearing. The front wall here is load bearing. We know that we've had water pooling here and water pooling here. It's not terrible here. You can see me picking away at this with my finger. That's all rotten in there. Whew. That's bad there. So that's rotten out. This is rotted out in here, underneath here. This seems okay in this area. And then we get below the window. And this is a disaster. So this is rotten all the way up, one full sheet of plywood. You can see a little bit of mold here. These old wood windows are absolutely brutal for not leaking. And then the bottom sill is completely gone. Like there's not even, that's awesome. Like you can just pull it apart. So this sheet, at least, of sheathing needs to go. Receptacle looks like it's in fantastic shape. We'll just reuse that. No need to change that. That bottom plate needs to get replaced. King stud needs to get replaced. This king stud, that's also not a king stud, so you can tell this isn't a load-bearing wall. Should go all the way from the bottom all the way up to the top double plate. Needs to get replaced. The sill plates, jack stud will need to get replaced. These studs will need to get replaced, and then it starts to look okay here. You can see that probably majority of the water was coming in through this window. Let's talk about the plan. We are assuming there's lots of damage to the sheeting. That will all come off. We'll go inside, remove all the damaged wood. Well, that's pulling itself out, so that won't be hard. The framing for the existing window will come out too, since it's going to be bigger. We'll take any studs out that need it, then we'll replace the bottom plate. Reframe the window opening for a larger window. Then we'll screw all the existing plywood into the new framing, cut the window opening to match the framing, and replace the damaged outside sheeting. This will restore the wall structurally, and we'll be able to get going on the exterior. When we didn't know what was wrong out here, we talked about 2 different options. We considered a second option, a forever repair for the garage, pouring a curb wall. This involves removing all the damaged sheeting and framing, then we cut up all the studs 10 to 16 inches, put concrete forms on both the inside and outside, and then pour a concrete curb wall and remove all the forms. All the framing would be repaired, adding a new bottom plate. This way would allow the garden to be built up to whatever height Mom and Dad wanted without dirt touching anything wood. Now, that's $1,200 worth of concrete, probably 3 or 4 days of our time to do that. If we don't fix this situation where the dirt is coming up on the wall, we're going to have that rot out anyway. To waterproof the wall, I'm going to clean off the concrete, use liquid flashing on the concrete to sheeting transition, add a drip edge, and then sheet the wall with new house wrap. I'll install a rain screen as overkill, adding concrete board on the bottom as a surface for the veneer stone. Here's what that assembly will look like at the bottom of the wall where it's of most concern. I'll make sure the proper drip edges are installed and then cap that off with new siding. This assembly will provide a place for any water that gets behind to wick out down the wall, protecting the framing. I'm going to have Dad dig out the back of the garden, put in landscaping fabric and clear drain rock, wrapping it with the fabric completely. This trench will get sloped to the far side of the garage, giving any place for water to drain to. So that's the plan, but first step is tackling all of this repair. Okay, let's get started on this wall repair. Mom and Dad got to work, ripped all the siding off here. Quite a bit of damage. This entire sheet shot. 1.5 feet on this sheet, that entire sheet. The rest of it's actually in not bad shape. So we have a bigger window going in here, so I'm going to have to reframe and do some moving of some of this electrical and then repair the bottom sill plate. So I think I'm going to start tackling the sill plate right away. So I threw the sill plate we have just to see how far it goes. And Dad did get one that goes all the way, which is nice. So we should be able to do this all in one shot. I'm just going to cut along all the bottom of the studs here to pull out the old sill plate, probably in pieces, and then we'll be able to fit this guy back in. This is a ground contact 2x4 sourced from a proper lumber mill. Using a reciprocating saw, I just cut through the studs right above the old sill plate. That came apart. I have a feeling we don't need to cut this one. Nope, I don't. Oh, that stink. I don't have to worry about cutting through the sheeting because it's all going to be replaced here. I'm cutting vertically through the sill plate where I want the new one to start. The easiest way to get the sill out is to cut the sheathing as well. The nails through the sheathing into the good sections of the sill will make it almost impossible to get out if you don't. This is easier than pulling nails from the outside. Once all the studs are cut and the sheathing is cut, the sill slides out. I'm making vertical cuts on either side of the anchors that keep the sill in place. We'll remove the anchors later and replace them. So what you've got on this is all of these plates are put in with these bolts coming up. So all these are going to have to get cut off because we're not going to be able to slide a new sill plate underneath with those bolts there. Let's take it to here. I think I've used up this blade. Take two. So this is precisely the material that you want holding up your walls because it'll do a fantastic job. So got it mostly cleaned up. So I need to cut these bolts off that hold the sill plate in because I can't get a sill plate in with those being there. So we'll cut those off and I have some rod to drill into the pad and anchor the whole piece in. So we'll do that after the sill plate's already in. We'll put one here at the end, a couple in the middle, and one here at the end on this side. Can't find a hammer, so I'll use an axe. I just couldn't cut past the washer. So that's the sill prepped. I'm gonna actually put a cup grinder on here and grind that down, otherwise I'm never gonna get the plate in. Same thing there, probably. So sill's prepped to go in. We only have two studs that touch it, so it should go in pretty easily. As you saw the Sawzall work there, you could see how it was getting supported by absolutely nothing. We'll get this one put in, and then hopefully it'll actually hold the wall up. So this is ground contact rated, but because I cut it up with a Sawzall, I have some sill gasket to go underneath it too. Just checking to see if it's actually the right length before I start this process. So I'm just putting a couple screws in because I can use them as lifting points to lift up those studs just slightly. With the sill gasket underneath it, it's not going to fit underneath those studs very easily. So this is sill gasket. So we'll get the sill gasket on and see how impossible this is to slide in. Okay, so I have it up at the back edge so that hopefully it'll stay under the 2x4. Okay, so the big problem here is that the sill gasket is right around double the thickness of what I cut with the Sawzall. So what I'm doing is I'm just lifting up on that screw that I put in. might have to cut that one up a little bit because it is pretty tight. Yeah, I should have learned that from the first time that happened. So we want to be careful not to overdrive this because we need 3/8 of an inch on the outside for the sheeting. So we don't want to go all the way to the edge. Oh, and that was super easy. Look at that. It's like I knew what I was doing. Okay, sill gasket underneath. You feel it on the other side. This one's good here. Pretty darn flush over there. Can't get much better than that. Okay, I have a piece of junk 3/8 inch plywood. I stick that over. We look good. We're good in the middle. And we're good on the ends. So I think that we're ready to permanently fix this sill in. I attached the studs to the sill using toe screws. This will keep it in place while I do all the wall repairs. I decided to anchor it after the repairs were complete, but I don't remember why. I would probably do the anchors after this step. I then had to get this electrical out of the way in order to remove and replace studs. I started getting rid of the completely rotten plywood and cut off the rod of a stud that I was about to sister with another stud. Since the wall moved around a lot, I ended up replacing pieces as I took them out to attempt to make it easier to pull things apart. Any electrical holes were drilled as I went. The stud spacing here was too tight to get them in afterwards. The sistered stud is then attached to the existing with 2 3-inch screws at 16-inch spacings. I made sure that the studs were plumb and square and then toe screwed them with 3.5-inch number 10 screws. All the electrical got hooked back up after I relocated the box since I needed this outlet back. Mom and Dad are busy ripping all the siding and house wrap off the outside. We need to get this window framed out. Since we had all this repair work to do, it was a perfect time to fit a bigger window. So Dad ordered a huge 48-inch by 36-inch picture window to replace the existing one. I'm just gonna get the bottom measured in, 49-inch rough opening. Since this is not load bearing, I didn't pull header or jack studs. I got some of the framing out of the way so that I could toe screw the studs. Let's make sure that our opening is right. 49.25. Okay. All right, so what I want this window height here to match the top of the door way over there. So what I did is grab my laser level. Can't really see it. You can see it right there. So we'll do the same rough opening here. So each stud is now marked. Mark 1.5 inches up on this. Cut all these studs, and then I'll put a top lid in. This is non-load bearing, so I'm doing advanced framing techniques. If you look it up, essentially it's use as little lumber as possible. It's for insulation purposes nowadays. All right, so I marked 1.5 inches up from the line here onto the stud. So this top plate will come into here, and then these will all get cut up 1.5 inches above the line, and we'll use these trimmers up at the top. So I'm just marking them all around so I can cut them with the Sawzall. So I always mark with an X which side of the line I'm cutting on. Now you don't want to cut through the sheeting because you're going to want the sheeting to overlap. So you can fasten it on. So I'm going to try and cut through these without cutting through the sheeting. So as you can see now, once I do this, this wall is extremely unstable. It's 49.25. Good for me. But the laser's good on both sides. It's a little bit low in the middle. So I'm gonna probably take a trim cut off those. Come up a hair. There we go. All right. What I'm gonna do is I am going to install a double bottom plate like this, and then I'll actually make it 3 inches lower. I'm gonna extend a 2x6 farther out. That'll allow me to put a nice tapered board on the bottom to wick water out if it needs it. Our climate doesn't really need it, but they like to water the garden here. And so it ends up hitting the wall. But we're getting to the point here where this now needs to come out. So what you want to do when you're doing this is make the straightest line possible. Because, you know, quality work. See if I can get it to go outside instead of at my face. Okay, now I'm gonna cut to the middle because that'll give me a little bit more control over this when it falls. All right, there we go. Holy crap, that's heavy. Let there be light. So we're now open. Any birds or fish or wildlife that want to come in. Now we'll measure this out. So it's twisted a little bit here. Tight at the back here, loose at the front. So I'll throw some screws in at the back on both of these, and then I'll screw the front afterwards once it's all locked in. 3/4, all right. So we're 62 3/4 on both. So that means that this window opening is square. So if the diagonals are the same, it's square. If the diagonals are not the same, then it is not square and you're in for a bad time. And for the windows, it's actually really important for that to happen. Otherwise you could get a situation where even your rough opening is skewed and you won't be able to fit the window in. All right, let's start to get some of these bottom studs in. 32 inches. 3 studs under here. So in all of these, when I installed them, I checked the crown on the studs, so they'll bend like this in this plane, and I put all the crowns to the inside. Inside or outside doesn't make much of a difference, as long as you do it the same. All right, I think our next step here is to take the sheeting off. So I gotta get this sheeting off, that piece off, well, I have that piece off there. And then I'll cut a 1 foot piece out to the bottom of that thing. Well, that's a good sign. These nails are on the bottom plate are really tough to get out, which means that the bottom plate isn't rotted out over here. I might drill in these anchors, the concrete anchors over here. Yeah, let's do that. So if you look down in these holes, what you would see is that they have a lot of stuff down at the bottom of them. So I'm just going to blow them out. We have some anchor adhesive, which is essentially a 2-part epoxy that comes in a tube. I cut some of this rod down. Apparently this stuff cures in 5 minutes. We'll see what happens. You can see it mixes in the tube. It's 2 parts. So I essentially brought the adhesive down to the bottom of the plate. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to shove a bolt in it. All right, there we go. Okay, and then I'll do the others. You could re-put a thing on here. That was easy. All right, anchors are in. Adhesive's on. It says to give it 8 minutes, which I don't trust at all, but I'll give it probably a day before I tighten those down. So we'll move on to finishing the sheeting. All right, sheeting time. So this is 3/8 inch spruce sheathing. I'm just going to put it on with 2-inch nail or screws. Okay, so I have a set of old 3/8 inch plywood that was left over from doing some of my work. So Dad has a short piece here that's going to fill in the damaged portion here. All right, so we ran into an issue. I can't pull the wire out of this conduit. It's over full and it's not coming out. So we're gonna have to find some sort of like in-place repair sleeve. I laid this out, cut a hole in it. We're gonna go to the stud here And I'll cut this out. All right, so I end up with 2 pieces. Should slide around that. I'm falling down a hole. Okay, so I got it fitted around that. Wall's repaired. Get this all cut out with a router, and then we'll get to wrapping this tomorrow. All the framing's done, all the repair is done. We're a little under 4 hours. All we need to do is get that window cut out, and then we're good to go. Day 3 of the wall. I have to trim out the window today, and then we're gonna start weatherproofing the wall to the foundation, and then we'll get started on wrapping, and we'll go from there, see where we get to. So we'll get a piece cut for this, get it in, and then we'll route out this window. I'm gonna put a bevel on this. So we'll put the crown up. So I'll put a bevel on this side. That'll go to our outside. So I have the table saw set to 2 degrees. Tighten in. So we have the bevel to the outside. When I route this outside edge, I'll continue that down, and then we'll have another piece to do the same with. That'll just give a little bit of positive drainage, and there's a little bit of a dam at the back. It's not huge, but it doesn't really probably need to be at all for our location. So what I have here is I have a 3/8 inch flush cutting bit on a router. I'm gonna set the bearing, there's a bearing in here, for just inside the plywood, so that it'll run on this sill here without a bunch of problem. Nice and flush all the way around. Good here. It's a nice quick way of doing a nice clean cut on these. Now that we're rebuilt, we need to address the causes of the problem. We've already addressed the groundwater intrusion by excavating out the garden and moving the dirt away. We've also sloped the patio away from the side door. That leaves the window and wall itself left to go. First, we'll start with new house wrap to waterproof the walls. The old tar paper wasn't in good shape. We're gonna start on sealing the sill here, getting ready for building wrap. So I gotta go down here and grind on the foundation to clean it up a little bit. Then I'll vacuum it, and then I have some caulking to go all along that seam, on the bottom, on the top, and then we have some Tyvek to go on this wall, and then I'll start on the window penetration. So my Sopra liquid flashing is stuck somewhere in delivery, so I'm going to seal the bottom of this with some OSI quad. This may be overkill, this may be underkill, I'm not 100% sure, so we'll seal with this. We're gonna put some on the foundation, on the wall, and on the crack, and try and feather it all together into a mash of goop. So I just have some shim material that I'm gonna use to tool out that joint to hopefully seal this a little bit so that if water gets behind the house wrap, it is sealed. But I have 4 tubes of this. Let's see how it goes. Technically, that should be sort of water sealed. Throw some building wrap over it. Okay, so I'm gonna house wrap this. So I just have a short roll. We have the bottom of the Tyvek embedded in the goop. We'll do a better job of taping behind those boxes with some liquid flash. I wanted to use the angle iron to allow me to support the stone that's going to go on this wall during the install. It's not absolutely required since we're using veneered stone, but it will make my future life easier. I chose to wrap sill tape from the Tyvek onto this. So we have the resistor to do that, primer. It had to be cleaned and primed. If you aren't doing stone or brick, this step is not necessary, and just get to wrapping the rest of the house. All right, all primed up. Wrapping the tape on this is straightforward. I adhered the tape to the vertical wall, pulling the backing off as I went. If you get too far ahead of yourself on this step, the tape will stick to itself. Then you can peel the backing off the other side of the tape and adhere it to the angle. Once the wall was repaired, it was time to weatherproof it. We opted for Tyvek. I'm going to go into more detail on this process in a future video when we do the house, so this is just a quick overview. It's straightforward to install. Staple the leading edge, unroll it, and then staple the perimeter of the paper to attach it to the wall. If you have open windows or doors, it's handy to shut the garage door so that it doesn't billow out. This is a simple process with 2 people, but awkward if you're using 9-foot rolls like us. I used a pneumatic stapler here because all my manual staplers are broken. It really makes quick work of installing it. I attempted to tuck the wrap under the existing tar paper at the top of the wall, but it was in such bad shape it just kept crumbling. Another good reason to replace the old building wrap. The next row up should overlap so that any water that gets on the wrap will sheet off. Once all the wrap is up, I went back and taped the seam. Just don't get it on your fingers because it sticks to them too. Since we had such terrible water intrusion on the old window, I did a much better job waterproofing the sill on this one. You saw how I tapered the sill board, which will allow water to run out. So I'm priming this again. I've been told by a couple window guys that the sill tape will not stick if you don't prime it. I'm going to tape the bottom sill, go up 6 inches up the side, and then wrap. Give that a few minutes to dry and we'll come back. Now you can watch me struggle with this window. Now I'm going to wrap the sill to keep water completely out. I will also cover this in much greater detail in a future video when I have to do the other 2 windows. I started at the center of the window because it makes it much easier to work the 6-inch tape and keep it from creasing. There's a plastic backing on the tape that you peel off. You can just split that in the center so that you can peel off only 1/2 at a time. No, it was tight. Lastly, as a final overkill measure for where we live, we're installing a rain screen. A rain screen is a vertical strip of wood or battens attached to the sheeting at each stud. The siding is then fastened to them. This allows any water that may go through the siding to move through the cavity to the base of the wall. Here we are doing it so the garden can get watered by a sprinkler and it will keep the wall completely dry. I ripped all the battens from 1x6, mostly because it was cheaper. The trick to installing them is to make sure that you are screwing or nailing through into a stud behind. I screwed them into the stud at one point, leveled them, and then fastened them the rest of the way. I added screws at approximately 16-inch spacing to securely fasten them to the wall. The rest of the window opening I will deal with once the window arrives. I don't actually know where all the mounting flanges and brick molds will go because Home Depot wasn't able to provide me with the outside dimensions. So we have most of the rain screen on. There's going to be some details we're going to have to do after the fact. The windows got back ordered, so they'll have to come later. And then we should be close to ready to go here. Finishing off the rain screen marks the end of the garage rebuild. This repair looks like a ton of work, but it wasn't that bad. Not being a load-bearing wall saved me a lot of work and worry. This wall is now ready for me to move forward with the finishing. Concrete poured and veneer stone, and then the trim and siding. Here's a preview to cap it off with the window in and sealed. As I said, we'll cover the windows in much greater detail in a future episode. This wall is now weatherproofed and ready for another 100 years. Please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you like this video. We'll see you next week where we'll finish off the stone and siding on the garage.